What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brandon Mulholland podcast. And a book called Lost Connections by Johan Hari explores the real reasons behind the rise in depression and anxiety rates in modern society. It challenges the traditional view that depression is primarily caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. I read this book a couple of years ago, probably 2, 3 years ago, and I always kind of recommend to people that have any sort of kind of like some sort of say mental kind of challenge or mental issue or any kind of issue in general, even if you're like perfectly okay. I do recommend this book because I think it really like explores like the kind of like the history of depression, like the kind of nine ways that causes it and like what the solutions would be. And the main kind of like takeaways I got from the book was that um that focusing solely on medication as a solution to depression may be misguided. Johan Hari, the author, he explores like the alternative explanations to the rise in depression, where he suggests where social and environmental factors play a significant role. Um, Another takeaway I got from the book was that there's like three lost connections. So this book would propose that this connection for three fundamental aspects of life contribute to depression. One of these is values, so a lack of sense or a sense of no sense of purpose or feeling like your life doesn't contribute to something larger than yourself. Like feelings of isolation and weakening social bonds, and mastery, so like the inability to learn and grow or a lack of control of your life. From a global perspective, there's research in the book that like it shows like different cultures and historical periods showing that depression rates tend to be higher in societies with these disconnections, and as well as this, he offers like solutions. Where the book offers suggestions in individual and societal changes that like could address these connections and potentially like reduce depression rates. And these like include, forming stronger like social connections, finding a sense of purpose, and kind of just having like just small goals, small wins, and like promoting mastery experiences. Overall, I found this book to be a credible perspective on the causes of depression and encourages like exploring solutions beyond just medication. It definitely highlights the importance of social connections and a sense of purpose in mental well being. So if I was just to kind of break down this book like from kind of chapter to chapter, kind of section by section, so it's three kind of sections of this book. Part I have have it here in front of me, but part one discusses like the history of like depression, like kind of like it's called the crack in the old story. He kind of like lays the groundwork for his entire argument. It's kind of like what part one's about, and part two is like there's like this connection, like he explains there's nine causes of depression and anxiety, and part three is like the solution, what he thinks is like the best kind of like antidepressant. He basically argues he argues against antidepressants, but he also kind of provides a solution that is an antidepressant, if you kind of get what I'm saying. So yeah, if I was to go through part one, so like I said, he basically lays the groundwork for his entire argument, and a breakdown of this would be he talks about how he basically critiques the dominant narrative surrounding depression. Like his narrative suggests that depression is caused solely by a chemical imbalance in the brain, primarily like a lack of serotonin. And he highlights this by the rise of antidepressant medication as the solution to this like perceived chemical imbalance. He also adds to this that he throws doubt on the simplistic chemical imbalance theory by presenting several arguments where he one talks about limited evidence where there's an exact link between a serotonin deficiency and depression, and like the link between serotonin deficiency and depression remains unclear. Like medications often have a delayed effect, suggesting that they may not directly address the chemical imbalance. He talks about the placebo effect, where studies show that like even placebo pills like can have a significant like antidepressant effect, suggesting psychological factors are at play. And he also discusses like historical shifts where depression rates have skyrocketed in recent decades despite no significant changes in brain chemistry. and he adds that something else must be contributing to this increase. So yeah, this book was written like back in 2018. This is when it was like first published. So obviously this, I'm just due to recent events in the last few years, this probably has gone up since this book was written. So it's kind of like startling that it has already been high before like before recently, and then it probably even is higher than normal since this book was written. So he basically then talks about like beyond the brain, like explore like alternatives. So he delves into the potential social and environmental factors that may be contributing to depression. So, like I said, he talks about like the feeling disconnected from society. So he suggests like a lack of strong bonds, meaningful relationships, and a sense of community can be a significant factor in depression. He talks about the loss of meaning and values. So when our lives lack purpose or like feel, or we feel like our actions are aligned with our core values, it can lead to dissatisfaction, hopelessness or hopelessness. And then for our modern living, he talks about how factors like social media pressure, constant busyness, and a disconnect from nature are explored as potential contributors to a sense of alienation. And he also talks about his kind of like the power of personal stories where there's like evidence from lived experiences. So he strengthens the argument by kind of weaving in, like he talks, like he was depressed himself, and he talks about his kind of story of how he overcame his depression. So he kind of like, he's not coming off this just from like a scientific way. Well, he is, but he's been in that situation as well. So it's not like he's coming at this blind. He kind of knows what it's like for people who are in this situation. And the stories also highlight like, the addressing root of this connection, such as finding meaning or reconnecting with loved ones, like often plays a key role in recovery. And then yeah, he talks about like the section is basically like the foundation for the rest of the book, and he sets the stage for like a deeper exploration of the root causes of mental health struggles in the modern world today. One thing you'd probably want to like maybe think is like how convincing are his arguments against the chemical imbalance theory. Like some people might be completely in agreement with him, or some people would be complete disagreement with him. It's kind of up to how you read the book and interpret it yourself. Um, then part two then discusses, he basically unveils the nine different ways that people, or why people, like nine different reasons why people are depressed. So part two, it's like he delves in, it's basically the core of the argument, and a detailed breakdown like goes beyond basic summary, like goes explores the nine disconnections he identifies as significant contributor to depression and anxiety. So to have like a kind of a blueprint for understanding, he's talked about like kind of the background of this in part one, and now after like he lays down the brickwork or the foundation, he unveils the nine key areas. So number one, he talks about like the loss of meaning. So the absence of a sense of purpose or direction in life can lead to feelings of emptiness and hopelessness. The second reason he talks about is the loss of values. So say for example, like when our actions don't align with what we believe is important, it creates a sense of like dissatisfaction. Number three, he talks about the loss of community. So feeling isolated and lacking strong bonds can have a detrimental impact on mental well-being. Humans are like, we're basically social creatures who thrive on connection. Reason four, he talks about the loss of status. So feeling undervalued, unimportant, or lacking a sense of accomplishment can contribute to depression. And then he talks about like the loss of story. So when um when we feel like our stories and experiences don't matter, it can lead to a sense of powerlessness and hopelessness. And again, he talks about like loss of work. So he talks about like disengaging unfulfilling work can be a major source of stress and dissatisfaction. Loss of play, so lack of leisure time and opportunities for relaxation can like also contribute to mental kind of health struggles. Loss of nature, so disconnecting from the nature world can have a negative impact on mood and well-being. He discusses how spending time in nature has proven benefits for mental health. And the ninth final reason is the loss of future. So feeling hopeless about the future, whether due to economic insecurity, environmental concerns, or it can be one of the main or prominent factor in depression. So he basically dedicates a chapter to each connection, providing evidence, research, and a case study to illustrate how each factor can contribute to mental health struggles. He explores historical and cultural context to understand how these connections have a more prevalent or have become more prevalent in modern society. And yeah, that's basically part two. Like, it doesn't just highlight the problems; it offers like potential solutions for reconnection in each area. Some examples would include like strengthening social bonds, finding work that aligns with your values, spending more time in nature, and engaging in activities you find enjoyable. And then when you look at the bigger picture, while each connection or disconnection is explored individually, he emphasizes the importance of interconnectedness of these factors. He argues that addressing multiple areas of disconnection is often necessary for true and lasting recovery. And then part three then is kind of like a different kind of antidepressant. So he basically suggests shifting, it like shifts from diagnosis to treatment. So he focuses on the power of reconnection as an antidote to depression and anxiety, instead of kind of just like taking loads of medication. So what he basically goes into in the final part of this book is that he kind of piggies back from the nine disconnections in part two. So he acknowledges the role of medications in some cases. However, he does emphasize the importance of addressing the root causes, so the disconnections, for long-term recovery. He argues that medication can be a temporary solution, but reconnection is the key to lasting change. He presents research and real life stories highlighting the effectiveness and reconnection in improving mental well-being. So he gives examples such as, like I kind of said before, like strengthening social bonds through like social groups, like finding work that aligns with your values, spending time in nature, participating in therapy that focuses on kind of like say building self-compassion or improving social skills. Like, while part three offers like practical tips for individual reconnection, it also acknowledges the need for broader societal changes. He suggests that social structures and cultural norms can contribute to this connection, and he encourages basically the reader, or to anyone kind of like even listen to an audiobook or something like that, he considers like how we can create a world that fosters stronger communities, meaningful work opportunities, and a deeper connection to nature. The book also has challenges and obstacles, where it acknowledges like potential challenges to reconnection, such as like social anxiety and or economic hardships. It offers suggestions for overcoming these obstacles and emphasizes the importance of taking small steps towards reconnecting. And then it basically rounds off or concludes with where he calls on the reader to reflect on their own lives and to identify areas of reconnection, and it advocates for broader social movements aimed for creating a world that promotes connection, supports mental well-being for all. And in the very end, then he offers like a roadmap for hope and healing. So the section offers like a message for hope and empowerment, and by understanding the power of reconnection and taking action both individually and collectively, the author believes we can create a future with less depression and anxiety. So yeah, I think from that's basically just a kind of a brief summary of the book. But I think by reflecting on these points I've just kind of discussed, you can gain a deep understanding of lost connections and its like vision for a more connected, mentally healthy world. It encourages basically a shift from a solely medical approach to mental health, and emphasizes the importance of addressing the root causes of disconnection through various forms of reconnection. But yeah, that is a quick kind of summary of the book. I really would recommend this book to anyone. I used to say kind of people who were kind of struggling, but I actually would recommend this to anybody because it actually is very insightful, even if you like it, because it could prevent, if you were to have problems later on in life, like this could kind of help you just be more clued in or aware of like the things to watch out for if in case you ever do suffer with anything like that. While I'm not like an expert or anything like that, and this isn't like kind of scientific advice or anything like that, but I would highly recommend that just even if you don't even like the book, just kind of just take like the lessons and just kind of like subconsciously kind of apply them to your own life. But yeah, I won't waffle any longer. Please reach out if you have any questions. This book is kind of, you can kind of get it anywhere. You can kind of get it in like the health section of if you're like in a bookstore, like the health section is kind of the way to go. The non-fiction kind of area, non-fiction slash health is probably where you're best to go. So it's not like a it's not like a business book or anything like that. So yeah, I will leave it there. Feel free to message me if you have any queries, I think about the book, anything you want to add in or have an input. I understand it's kind of a sensitive topic, so I know there is obviously room for criticism and all that. But yeah, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next episode of the Brand Holland podcast. Bye bye.